12,000 years ago, after the last ice age, the Great Glacier melted and retreated, creating a drainage system in what is now known as the Grand River. In this unique watershed, the main river is merely 98 miles long, a north-flowing waterway with a sharp left turn. In Native American language, this river was called the Shiaga Seep, meaning Raccoon River. The Grand River watershed is one of Ohio's most wild and scenic regions, home to river otters, swamp cottonwood, the four-toed salamander, and bald eagles, just to name a few of the region's incredibly diverse species. Its marshy headwaters lie in southeastern Geauga County. From there, the river meanders north through Trumbull and Ashtabula counties, where an ancient lake bed has evolved into a rich wetland habitat. Just south of Austinburg, the Grand turns west into Lake County, cascading through a picturesque valley and steep shale gorges. Here, oxygen-rich riffles create an entirely different habitat. As it nears the end of its journey, the Grand changes surroundings yet again, flowing past busy marinas, popular restaurants, and Fairport Harbor. The Grand and its tributaries have a lot to offer, both excitement and solitude. Its natural environment is equally enjoyed by anglers, boaters, birdwatchers, and all those who simply love to visit the water's edge and take pleasure in the freedom offered by this pristine waterway.
Waterways are an important resource for both the ecosystems they support and the human settlements they affect. To protect and restore these natural waterways, Ohio passed the Scenic Rivers Act in 1968.
Because of its high-quality water and sections of clean, undisturbed habitat, the Grand River was designated both wild and scenic on January 17, 1974. The upper, scenic portion is 33 miles long, located in Ashtabula County between US 322 and Harpersfield Dam. The wild section runs for 23 miles downstream from the Harpersfield Covered Bridge to the railroad trestle south of Paynesville.
One area that we do have authority over under the Scenic Rivers Law is a review over public-funded projects located outside of municipal limits and within 1,000 feet of either side of the river. And primarily the types of projects we get involved with the environmental review are bridge replacements and reconstruction projects. The purpose of that authority is not to stop the projects from occurring, but to assist in the design of the project and monitoring of the project to ensure that the project's done in the most environmentally acceptable manner. We don't have any authority over private property rights when the river is designated, but we do provide technical assistance to private landowners where we can meet with them regarding a problem they might be having on their riverfront property, such as an erosion control problem, and give them advice on how they might best control problems. Too often landowners think that the best way to stabilize a riverbank might be to dump rock or put a bulkhead wall in or something like that, when really that causes adverse impacts to the habitat on the Grand River. And we're available to provide assistance in a technique that's called soil bioengineering, where you actually utilize natural plant materials that help to stabilize the river.
It's been called one of the finest examples of a natural stream to be found anywhere in Ohio. The biodiversity found here is breathtaking. Within the 712-mile watershed, you'll find more than 50 of the state's rare, threatened, and endangered species. More than 400 macroinvertebrates, including 34 kinds of mussels, 74 kinds of fish, 115 species of breeding birds, 45 mammals, 18 reptiles, and 10 amphibians. The number of plant species hasn't been totally counted, but it is likely close to 2,000. It's this amazing richness of life that must be preserved.
Well, the Nature Conservancy has identified the Grand River in two of its ecoregional plans, the Great Lakes Plan as well as the Western Allegheny Preserve Ecoregional Plan, as being very important for fish and mollusk species. And it's one of the most biologically diverse and functional ecosystems in Northeast Ohio.
There is so much hidden yet in this river. We have spent, actually for every 10 days we spent in the Grand, we probably spent a half a day in any other river in this part of Ohio. And we're still finding new important sites. We're still finding additional threatened and endangered plants. There's so much high quality forest and wetland and river edge to be looked at. We're going to continue to find some great sites. It's not, some people may think that we've found everything and now it's time to just protect it all. There's still some great places yet to be found.
One thing we're trying to do by providing more access to the river, especially in the lowlands area, is to provide the public with more of an appreciation for it by being able to view it themselves, by taking a canoe trip on the Grand River, and not necessarily to fish or hunt, but to just appreciate, butterflies, or like the birds we hear singing right now, and just really realize, the potential of the area and why it's so important that we keep this as a crown jewel in Northeast Ohio.
Together, buffer zones and wetlands are invaluable to a river's ecology. Riparian corridors, also called forested buffer zones, are narrow vegetated strips of land on both sides of a waterway. Trees, shrubs, and grasses act as a cushion that shields the river from whatever lies beyond. Trees along the river provide shade to keep the water cool, which provides a livable environment for a great variety of aquatic plants and animals. Indeed, the buffers are the perfect habitat for both aquatic and terrestrial wildlife. On a more personal level, the beauty and intimate nature of a forested stream bank cannot be underestimated in the quality of life. Just take a look at the alternative. Buffers filter out pollutants from farm fields, highways, and commercial development. By absorbing excess rain or snow, they help reduce the severity of flooding.
If you take a look over here across the river, you'll see that there's a pretty good riparian forest buffer on the banks, yet you'll still see some erosion. And because the Grand River is a buried glacial valley, it flows through a buried glacial valley, you have a lot of soil particles that are very loose, and they don't have a strong cohesive nature. And the things that really helps to hold those soil particles together here in the Grand River watershed are the tree roots, which actually interconnect with each other and help to hold those soil particles in place.
Wetlands are low-lying areas covered or saturated by water during all or part of the year. They include marshes, swamps, bogs, and fens. Nearly 90% of Ohio's original wetlands have been drained to make way for farms, roads, houses, and other development. It wasn't until recently that the benefits of swampland was recognized. Wetlands act like sponges, soaking up and storing excess surface water, releasing it slowly over time, keeping the environment watered and controlling floods. Underground aquifers are recharged from this filtered water as well, a feature that's very important to communities and individuals who depend on well water. Wetlands also play a critical role in maintaining the high water quality of lakes, streams, and rivers. Wetlands have such a high rate of biodiversity that they're considered treasures by biologists and botanists. These habitats are home to many of Ohio's rare, threatened, and endangered species. More than 65% of these plants and animals are dependent on wetlands for some or all of their life cycle.
Loss of wetlands in the watershed is another big issue. No doubt that we continue to lose wetlands in our area, and when we do, there's less space for water to be soaked up. And where we have less space for water to be soaked up, it must run off a lot quicker. And when it does that, it's running over our banks quicker, it's entering into the streams quicker, and that ruins our aquatic life. Clearing out areas right next to the stream is another no-no. When we clear out those areas, of course, we open up the areas for erosion, and we also increase the temperature of the water.
Rivers are among the Earth's most valuable and vulnerable resources. What's put in the river has a cumulative effect all the way from its headlands to its ultimate end in the world's oceans. When rivers are allowed to decline and die, the economic cost can be enormous. No one wants to live, work, or play near a polluted stream. Pollution, litter, and excessive siltation have a serious effect on outdoor recreation. You can't go fishing if there are no fish. You can't swim or boat if the water makes you sick. And who wants to canoe or have a picnic along a dirty stream?
Clean water makes everything possible. Wildlife, fish, enjoyable swimming, canoeing, hiking, paddling, biking. Everybody, when you cross a river, everybody looks at a river. I don't care what bridge you cross. If you're going over a bridge, people look down at the river. And as long as the river is clean and healthy, then that helps us with our economic development out here.
Biggest threat that we see in Ashtabula County and in probably a lot of the watershed is the growth that's taking place, the land use change, without a lot of thought to that change, meaning placing of homes and changing the land use without thinking about erosion control, without thinking about water quality, stormwater management, issues that with a little bit of planning and forethought you could still have and still protect the river.
Well, there are the standard threats that all rivers face, such as incompatible agricultural or development where you've got siltation or pollution or septic runoff. There are also invisible threats to the river, especially from invasive non-native species, both plants and animals, which can really disrupt the functioning of the system and really degrade the native plant communities that live there.
It's to everyone's benefit to protect a river's ecosystem and keep threats at bay. Activism has to start with a community effort of concerned citizens who want to preserve the natural resources of their neighborhood. A powerful ally is the Grand River Partnership. This organization is a consortium of some 30 public agencies, private organizations, and citizens. Together, they share a vision of protecting the water quality, aquatic habitat, wetlands, and forests of the 712 square mile Grand River watershed.
Without the partnership of all the various organizations and without the coordination of Grand River, this achievement of all of this protected land would not be possible. We need your help, everybody's help, the landowners in donating conservation easements, the state in acquiring open space, agricultural easements, the Department of Natural Resources in orchestrating the whole project. They're all important, and we all need your help.
The Grand River Partnership is a unique experience where multiple organizations and agencies and individuals have come together over a common concern, and that concern is the protection of a very high-quality stream in Ohio. It transcends organizational positions, and it transcends individuals. It is a collective that's hopefully going to continue to be successful in gathering support, public awareness, and successful efforts to actually preserve and protect the Grand River watershed.
One way the Grand River Partnership is protecting the watershed is through conservation easements. Conservation easements are restrictions placed on property to protect its resources. An easement can be voluntarily sold or donated by the landowner, who retains ownership of the land. The easement is a legally binding agreement that limits the land's use. They can establish protective river corridors without enacting local zoning regulations.
I heard about conservation easements and a little bit. Went to a meeting at the Arboretum, learned a little bit more, talked to Soil and Water and Grand River Partners, and it seemed to be the way to go to protect all of this land for no matter what happened to me or the area that's close to the road. So that's why I wanted to do it. I wanted simply to protect it so that other people besides me could enjoy it. And walking on the property, watching the birds and the animals, and perhaps doing a little tiny bit of camping. One of the things we did with the conservation easement was to save a little spot, put up an Adirondack shelter for kids or adults to have a little overnight camping. It just seemed to be an ideal way to protect some very attractive land. I worked with both Grand River Partners and with Soil and Water, and everybody was very helpful, and I'm very happy with the results. There's no public access to this. I use it just as I've always used it. I can walk on the trails, I can maintain the trails, I can take firewood occasionally if I need to. It's perfect for me. It's a win-win situation. The greatest benefit is simply knowing that the land is going to remain in its great condition and it isn't going to be developed. Nobody's going to come and cut down all the trees and do something destructive. If you love the land and want to protect it in any way, this is an ideal way to do it. And these can be written quite individually. I did learn that early on from the Arboretum, for instance. They have some major conservation easements that allow for homes to be built in certain areas. So my little Adirondack shelter is a minor example of what can be done. But they're written individually so that whatever the particular landowner needs or wants can be taken care of.
It's really about the adults, the folks that can make the decisions, the decision makers today. We need to think about what we want it to look like in 20, 25 years. We need to give the youth the chance to be able to maintain what we've taken care of. Because if we don't do it now, when the 5 and 10-year-olds become young adults or decision makers, their decisions will be much harder and much more difficult to turn any damage around.
The Grand and its tributaries, as well as all our watersheds in Ohio, are worth protecting because they're the very basis of our quality of life. As stewards of the land, it's up to us to ensure a rich and fulfilling future for our children and our grandchildren. And you are invited to do your part.